Dr. Stephanie Burgos joins In the Calm. Dr. Stephanie is an ER doctor, functional medicine doctor, and a medicine woman. That's right, fam. You guys are going to love this deep dive. Stephanie takes us into deep conversation about frequency medicine, learning to listen to your inner callings and body messages, as well as an exploration of plant medicine and so much more. You guys know how much I love bridging wellness, our modern lives, and ancient wisdom, and Stephanie is the total embodiment of that. She's also a very dear friend, so of course I'm psyched that she is here joining us. She shares her journey of letting go of who and what she thought she needed to be so that she could learn how to flow into her inner calling. Let's dive in. Welcome to In the Calm. I'm your host, Georgiana Alexander. Beautiful friend, Dr. Stephanie Burgos, welcome. So glad to have you on In the Calm.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me. What an honor. It's so beautiful to see you.
I can't wait to dive into all the details of your journey because it's so fascinating. And I think you're just such a testament to where the mindset of medicine and health and wellness from a really holistic, functional perspective is going. Before we get into that, I really would love to kind of go back, where your journey to your spirit, where your journey began. You started in modern medicine. You're an ER doctor, and you also have the background now in functional medicine as a medicine woman, but you started in modern medicine. So how did that journey go to where you are now in helping people the way you do now?
Yeah, so I have to take it back to when I was probably younger. So I always knew that I wanted to be a doctor. But really, I think in theory, it's that my spirit and my soul always knew that I was a healer. And in terms of just what was around me and what was presented to me and just in society, it's like, oh, I'm a healer. I want to help heal others. I see that this is the way. So I'm going to go this way. This is the only way is to become a doctor. And so from a very young age, I actually knew I wanted to be in medicine, probably from when I was 6 or 7 years old. Wow. And I would sit with my dolls and I would act like I was a doctor and I would take notes and I would write prescriptions for them. And sometimes even now when I think about, okay, what is the life that I want to create now? I try to think back to that little girl because she was just so pure. And what did she want to do in that time? And so based off of that, I pursued medicine and I pursued that path. And, I was very single focused, very much, knew that this was what I wanted to achieve. And so I took the steps necessary, everything that I did in high school, everything that I did in college, everything that I did to become a doctor, that was truly my obsession in a way in life. And it was a hard journey. It was a hard journey because throughout that process, I had many setbacks of just people who didn't believe in me and letting that programming kind of take over my mindset and take over kind of how I looked at myself. And so I had several hardships and several obstacles along the way, difficulty with test taking, difficulty getting into medical school. I applied to 30 schools and I had 29 rejections. I had 29 rejections before the final one came through. So really just having to really step out in faith and just say, I know this is going to work out. I really believe in myself. I believe that I'm meant to be doing this work. And so I was checking off all the boxes in modern society. When you're on a professional path, there really is this checkbox, this list that you just need to check off. And, you're like, okay, if I do A, then I'll do B, then I'll do C. And if I do this, then I will get to my goal. And if I do this, if I become a doctor, then I'm going to be happy. And I'm going to be fulfilled and I'm going to have everything that I want. And that was the mindset. That was the mindset I had. So I got into medical school. I went to residency. I worked like crazy. I was working incredibly hard, 70, 80-hour weeks. And just really at the same time, I was also not only doing that, but I also started building an online business. I really had promised myself that I would not let medicine take over my life. That was something I knew early on. I will not let medicine take over my life. And so as a result, I knew that I needed to start branching out as well and build other things for whatever reason. I didn't know, what I would need them for, but I just had this kind of, this calling to build something. And I always knew that there was a strong connection between mind, body, and spirit, because when I wrote my essay to get into medical school, that was what I focused on. I focused on kind of the combination between body, mind, and spirit. And so it's just really interesting for me as I reflect on where I am now and the things that I talk about now, and how, again, I always think that along our path, there are breadcrumbs we kind of have, even if our path is very wayward or very up and down. If we look back, there are breadcrumbs along the way that we can pull from to really help us determine, okay, what is the most aligned path for us and what are we here to do? So I finished my residency, I finished my training, and then I started working full time. And it was when I started working full time and I was like, okay, I'm here. I've achieved everything. I have a supportive husband, I have a beautiful marriage. And so that was something I've been very blessed with. And I remember in 2018, that's when things started to shift for me. So in 2018, I had become a doctor. I had my full-time work. I had built a successful online business that was making, 6 figures. And I was feeling really fulfilled in that. I had just bought a beautiful home on a lake. I had my husband was preparing for my marriage. So I had all the pieces. And yet I still had this sinking feeling that it wasn't enough. It wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be. And I was still dealing with comparison. I was still dealing with jealousy. I was still dealing with wanting more, because I had gotten sucked into that programming of more, that we need more. And just in that programming of always doing. And so I remember sitting there and sitting in my living room and just saying, something is not right. Like, I had this inner knowing. And as soon as I acknowledged that, I started crying and I started hyperventilating. And I was talking to my husband and I was just like, something is not right. How I am looking at life, my intentions for what I'm building do not feel aligned. I am really desiring a lot of external things, a lot of external validation. And it was almost like my soul's call, like the siren was going off that if you keep walking down this path, you're going to burn out. It's a trap. And in that moment, I said, I need to go inward. I need to go within myself. I need to connect spiritually. I literally said, I was like, I feel like I need to connect spiritually. I grew up religious. I grew up Catholic. I grew up Christian Catholic. And I stepped away from the church for a long time because I just didn't resonate with some of the practices, some of the dogma. And so it was just really interesting that here I was sitting here and I was like, okay, I need to connect spiritually. And what does that mean? That was the beginning. And I was like, okay, because I realized I was like, it doesn't matter if I'm making $100,000 or I'm making $500,000. It doesn't matter. The money doesn't matter if I don't see myself, if I don't feel fulfilled within myself, if I don't love myself, if I don't feel like it's enough. And so in that moment, I decided to really evaluate my life and I started to do more meditation and I picked up the practice of yoga. And so it was in that time, those were the two things that I first started with. And I picked up the practice of yoga, I started going to yoga every single day. And I started to really anchor in the breath and I started to really quiet my mind. And it was interesting because I was starting to feel more settled in my nervous system. I was starting to feel overall just kind of more at peace and just feeling like, okay, this is the path. This is the way that I need to start going. And in that process, I started attracting different people into my life because now that my frequency was changing, I started attracting new individuals. And it was interesting because in that, we started to have conversations around other alternative ways of healing, plant medicine being one of them. Plant medicine is a huge part of my journey. It has been key and fundamental to my journey. And so it was interesting because I came across a group of friends and it was like, we decided to meet in person. And one of them was just like, you know what? We should try psychedelics. We should try mushrooms. We should try. And I said, you know what? This feels right. Like this feels right. And as someone, like I never did anything in the past with my medical background, I was like, let me look this up. Let me make sure this is safe. I've heard of this.
Yeah.
Like, let me make sure. And I did my research and I was like, okay, this is going to be good. This is going to be fine. Nothing's going to happen. This is safe. And, this has been going on for thousands of years. They've been using this in the indigenous ways. And I remember my first ceremony, my first journey, and it really was very grounding for me. It really showed me, like when I worked with the plants, it was like, I've done this before and this is my path. This is my medicine. And so that really shifted my life so much in a sense where I felt such a deep calling to going into my own inner world. And I remember because that moment that I decided to go inward was a really big shift because I had spent my life extremely driven by the fire. I was extremely passionate. I'm an extremely passionate person, but I was extremely passionate. I was very driven. I knew what I wanted, whatever I wanted, I made sure that I made it happen. And when this shift started to happen, it's almost like that flame went out, but it didn't really go out. But in that time, I felt like it went out. Mm-hmm. And I remember it felt like I almost put a sign up on my heart, the door of my heart. And I feel like I just said to the world in a way, and also to myself, but to the world, I said, I'll be back. I'll be back. And
I'll be back sign on the door.
And sign on the door. And I literally feel like I turned inward and I walked into my heart and I came to an ocean and I jumped in and I dived in and I went deep and I stayed there. I was in that deep water for almost 3 years of being in the water, in the ocean of my own personal ocean, my ocean of emotions, and just really this path and this journey of self-discovery, going deep into the shadows of myself, going deep into the underworld of myself. It was in that process that I found myself. And it was in that process of being willing and having the courage to go there and to allow myself to unravel and allow myself, thank goodness I had created such freedom in a way. I had the resources to give myself 3 years to be able to do this work so intensely because it literally, like I said, it shifted my life. I literally committed to the plants. I worked extensively with the plants. I went to the jungle. I did a lot of just kind of silent retreats, and it was what my soul needed. And in that time frame, I sat with ayahuasca. I did all these different things. And then what ended up happening is that when I sat with ayahuasca, I realized I was like, this is what true healing is. And it was in that moment that I felt very misaligned with my path in medicine. I felt very misaligned with the work I was doing in the ER. I felt like I was not really healing people or helping to heal people. I'm not a healer. Everyone has a healer within themselves. I'm simply here to, help people to realize that. But I felt like I was just putting on a lot of Band-Aids. And I felt like there was a part of me that felt like I was contributing to the greater problem by working in the ER. And so I felt very misaligned for a long time. And, I love modern medicine. I love Western medicine. I think it's needed. It has its place, especially when it comes to acute conditions, when it comes to accidents, when it comes to broken bones, when it comes to heart attack, like all these things, we need it. However, when it comes to chronic symptoms, when it comes to mental health, when it comes to, a lot of these other chronic conditions, it falls short and we need to pull and we need to remember that's where we need to think about the more holistic principles. We need to think about the ancient ways. We need to take it back to the simple things of nutrition, movement, breath, nature, all these things that are so simple when it comes to healing. And that's what kind of led me. So as I kind of continued my journey, as I saw, I was like, okay, there's a reason why God keeps this door open for me in terms of Western medicine. There's a reason why it's so easily open. Let me not completely abandon it yet. Let me not completely abandon it and let me sit here and let me stand here and let me plant seeds where I can and let me bring my frequency here while also learning more about the holistic medicine, while also starting to work with people with breath work, with health coaching, with functional medicine, and just doing the things that light me up and kind of being this bridge. So now that's where I am today. Today, where I am navigating this bridge between modern medicine and that path, as well as the ancient way and kind of ancient medicine and the medicinals and the plants, and just navigating and forging in a way a new path. It's not one way and it's not the other way. It's a bridged way. And so that's where I am today.
I have so much to say to this. I have so much I want to get into with this. I just want to go all the way back to where you started with this. It is such a testament to your never giving up, to your having that knowing of what you were meant to do, schools rejecting you. And then
29.
the last 29, and then the 30th was the one, that was your pathway. That's really interesting now, knowing your journey, and that maybe those other schools really couldn't have held the space for you to become the doctor that you needed to be. It was in perfect alignment, but that you didn't give up on that you kept moving forward in every way that you could, in trust and in that faith that you knew you were on the right track. That is so powerful, because so many people would think, oh, that's the sign. I just need to give up. And you're like, that's not the sign. The sign is I haven't aligned yet.
Exactly. And I just want to speak to that, because the way that actually ended up happening was that I had the 29 rejections and I hadn't heard from the 30th school. And I am the one that actually needed to go and reach out. You're right. Many people would have just stopped there and they just would have said, I have 29 closed doors. That's it. This path is not for me. Everyone is right. I don't have what it takes to get in. And I just remember thinking, there's one more that I haven't heard from. And I reached out to them. And had I not reached out to them, I don't think I would have heard from them, because they actually said they had misplaced my application. So they had misplaced my application. And then when I called back out, they were able to review it again. And then that is what ultimately ended up where I ended up getting the yes and receiving the yes. And so it's a testament as well, is that all we need is one door open. All we need is that one yes, that foot in the door. And it is a testament of not giving up on yourself and just continuing to walk forward.
And the courage to take a step forward. Had you not reached out, you wouldn't have known, you wouldn't have heard, you would have assumed it was a no. And still taking that step forward, even though it's scary, a lot of times, like that, sometimes you do have to take that nudge forward. There is a little bit of a challenge, to overcome that might be a part of your journey to learn deeper trust in yourself. So I want to circle back to that trust in yourself for just a moment. But wow, I just love the beauty of this story. I know some of it because just in our friendship, I've gotten to know you and hear pieces of this story. And I can attest to your roots and your background, like your soul yearns for the jungles. It yearns for the wisdom of Egypt, for the planetary wisdom, this earth wisdom that comes from the ancient knowledge. But you are such a modern woman. And I love that you know that you are the bridge to that, because I think so many of us coming forward feel that and don't know how to really name it or say it. I feel similarly, I'm the bridge between different dimensions and worlds. We are creating and forging a new path. And that's really, really, really critical for people listening, not just with their health and wellness, but in their business, in their personal lives. Right now is the time there's doorways opening that have never been opened before. We are merging different worlds together. It really is a new paradigm of possibilities. And so the whole world around you may be looking and feeling and saying something different. And you're going to have to just close your eyes and step through that doorway, just like how you did with the school. And then again, in finding your answers in that 3-year, not really void, but it was like going into those deep waters of yourself. Yeah.
Yes.
So then going back into this, I want to get into the plant medicine side of this too, because I have so many questions. I think a lot of people do, and especially with your wisdom in all different areas of medicine, and also medicine of the heart, medicine of the soul, not just the physical body. So as you begin to unlock this spiritual journey within yourself, and then you did step back into the ER. What was that vision like? I mean, you even said you felt like maybe you were contributing to the problem. I know so many people are right now questioning, especially post-pandemic, when there's so many different elements of things that took place during that time, from high levels of stress to new different substances or different ways of eating, or all the different things that happened. We collectively went through a trauma. There's so many unanswered questions that people are hearing with their health and wellness. What did your eyes show you in the midst of the hospitals? And what did you see that were the gaps? Or you're like, wow, if we would just add this would really be so supportive.
Yeah, I think when it comes to that, like, especially after I sat with the medicine and I started to realize, the importance, just number one, the importance of, there's so much that is rooted in dis-ease and disharmony. So when I think about dis-ease, I really think of it as disharmony in the body. I've stopped really saying it as disease and just really calling it disharmony. And it's really disharmony between the physical, the mental body, the emotional body, and the spiritual body. And so again, I think when I went back, I found myself really wanting to start making connections for my patients of like, okay, yes, you're feeling these symptoms. This could be rooted in these emotions. Like, I wanted to ask more questions about their background, about their family life, about their upbringing, about like, when did their symptoms start? And these are some of the questions that I feel like are not being asked, especially in many kind of practices. And I think it's important. I think it's important to understand that, again, all disease, all disharmony is rooted in, not all, but most of it's rooted in emotional suppression, repression. It's rooted in the trauma response. It's rooted in our nervous system regulation. What I realized from this journey is that it's important, and I think it's part of my own personal mission too, it's important that we need to heal the healers. We need to heal the healers. We have a lot of people who are practicing, who are out there helping people, a lot of physicians, healthcare professionals, therapists, and they're not doing their own work. They're not walking fully in integrity of a healed individual. And how are we going to help someone else heal if we're not healed? For me, it really started to open my perspective of being like, okay, this is one area that I see as lacking, is missing, that we need to bring some of this work into the healers themselves need to embody this work. They need to go on a healing journey. They need to, go within themselves, because I've been thinking of this is like, so I don't know if this is on topic or off topic, but I've just been
We're here for all of it. I'm here for all of it.
We're here for all of it. But I've been thinking about like, what if healing was as simple as like a frequency transfer, a frequency transfer, that it was just like, if you and I came together, and because I'm embodying such a grounded, version, and I'm whole, like I've been integrated, I'm fully integrated. So now when you come into my sphere from a frequency and an energy standpoint, that's going to help train you and cause those shifts to start happening with you. It could be instantaneous. Who knows?
I think 100%. Yeah.
I believe in quantum healing, and I feel like that is where we're going. We're going towards, and I've experienced quantum healing, and it's where we're heading. And right now, so we're in that bridge of like, now the energy is coming forward, the energy medicine. And I think that's where we're heading. And then after that, we're going to head towards the quantum. And that journey, I don't know how long that journey, it can be as fast as we want it to be, but it's going to be, dependent on everyone and everyone's resistance and everyone's willingness to surrender. But that was one of the things. So one of the things was that,
just to add into that really quickly too. I mean, talking about that for everybody listening, I mean, I get so excited about this because you know how I feel about quantum everything. But so how does it feel for everyone listening when you come in contact with somebody who can hold space to validate your truth? No matter how absurd it may seem, you suddenly embody a whole frequency shift. You feel strong. You feel empowered to step forward in places you didn't feel before. And so just put that into context with medicine, with needing healing. It can be that fast, and it really is that shift. I mean, I think that's why we hear of so many miracles as well, when people really get into a different mindset and mentality and
Yes.
embodiment and frequency plays when they are healing from disharmony, from disease, right? These miracles can shift, and they can shift so fast beyond what a modern medicine practice lens would say is potential, is possible. And so I
Yes.
completely think that this is where we're headed as well. I'm so excited that you brought that into the comment. Ooh, yeah.
Absolutely. And I want to give an example because I feel like this is very common right now. I've been hearing this. So I had a friend recently who reached, and it goes to show like how I think it's important that healers are healing, why it's important that we're asking the right questions in medicine and not just trying to give a medication and just trying to put a Band-Aid on something and not really getting to the root. So I had a friend of mine recently who was kind of labeled with ADHD. So just kind of, and not being able to focus, which is very common. I've been reading like right now, there's a lot of people who are struggling with focus. They're struggling they're showing that post-pandemic. And I think it's because, again, what the pandemic did was really stop us and slow us down and really forced us to get still and really forced us to kind of be at home. And we became more aware. It was a huge awakening process. We became more aware of who we are and our thoughts. And I think, again, once we know something, we can't undo what we know. So now that we became hyper aware of our thoughts and our hyperactivity as an individual, our nervous system hyperactivity, now we're trying to, kind of create our life. And we're like, it's challenging for a lot of individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is what's happening to my friend. And it was interesting because she said, well, the doctor I went to basically just told me like my only option is to take the medication. And I got really upset about that. Like, I was just like, well, actually, I don't know. I disagree with that. I feel like could there be a chemical imbalance? Yes. And could there be natural ways for you to come back into balance? Absolutely. Especially with the fact that most individuals are not getting the proper nutrition, are not getting the proper vitamins, the proper minerals that they need for their body to stay in balance. And that's an important part of healing. But also one thing I asked her, I said, it's important I said, because for her, she lives by her to-do list. She lives by, if I don't get this to-do list done, I'm not productive. And then she shames herself, and then she feels guilty, and then she feels bad. And so it's almost like all this pressure and all these expectations. And so I asked her, I said, what happens if you don't get your to-do list done? What happens? What have you made that to mean about you? How have you made your to-do list a part of your identity? And she was like, oh my goodness, I had never really thought about that. And I said, because I believe that the real conversation has to do about pacing ourselves. The real conversation has to do about like, what are we actually capable of? We have to understand that we've lived in a society that is all about doing and all about action and all about moving full speed ahead. And our mind can move full speed ahead, but our body is not as fast as our mind. Our physical body is not as fast as our mind. And I want those listening to hear me when I say this, that your body is our most dense thing that we have. Mm-hmm. And we need to honor that pace. Our body is nature. We need to honor the pace of nature, which is why a big part of this process of healing is connecting back to nature and remembering. So anyway, I just wanted to share that because there is a lot of people who are struggling with focus, and they're struggling with wanting to do all these things, and their mind is scurrying like a squirrel, like they're scurrying all over the place. And it's really because this is the body's call to really get still, even though that's difficult, because I know it's difficult. Yeah. But what's difficult usually is your medicine, usually is the medicine that you need. What's difficult for you to do is usually the medicine that you need to bring you back into balance. And so it's been really beautiful because now she's more open to more alternative ways. And she's really realizing that she needs to shift her mindset around, you know what? I don't need to make sure I do all this on my list. Like, I can take my time. I can do one thing at a time. I can make sure I honor my body. I can make sure I rest, etc. So I just wanted to add that in there.
I kind of want to share a story with you because growing up, I was diagnosed as ADD as well. And I did take the medication, and I really struggled with it. I fought with it, and it was my choice. I was very young. I think 5 to 23, I was off and on of different medication for it. And I would get off and I would feel like myself. Then I was on the medication and I could focus. but I did not feel like myself. I didn't feel as connected to myself. And so that was the struggle. Well, what I realized later was a lot of the things that I was having to numb other things happening in my life, trauma experiences, right? That at that time I wasn't able to deal with or cope or understand how to work through and process. Sugar with a lot of coloring, food coloring.
Yes.
And these things, though, when it does, it comes back to our medicine, right? The food that we eat really plays a big part. Undealt with traumas, we just all went through a huge collective trauma. That sitting in stillness unearths all the things that we haven't dealt with because we're signaling our body as a collective. We're like, it's an awakening, right? And so the energy of the universe has gotten, it's a quickening. It's much faster. It's less dense. Everyone's waking up. But also because everyone's waking up, there is so much static noise in the air. So that I think also plays a part. Everyone is awakening to different energetic dimensions that they haven't really been in. And so where it used to be quiet space in those places, I can tell you, because I'm clairaudient, it is loud. And sometimes I'm like, would everybody just shut up? Like, it gets like really loud in this area because it's like frantic energy, right? Everyone's awakening and expanding into different places. And so I've heard that shift through clairaudience and felt it in my body and had to come back into grounding within myself. But back to my ADD story to validate what you're saying, the medicine got me through the time period because I didn't have the right tools that I needed to heal the root cause. And that's not just to discredit anyone's journey of whatever they are going through with wherever they can show up. That's where you need to be. But I think that it's so valuable to look at the root causes of things because, as you said, it really does come back to the energetics, the emotions, our body, how we're showing up and loving our body. We are of the earth. We breathe with the earth, as a wholeness. We breathe in and out with the plants, with the animals. And when we disconnect from that, and we can integrate that into a modern lifestyle. But when we disconnect ourselves by shutting down and dissociating with our foods, with misuse of technology, and I say misuse like beyond it a lot, but if you're using it as a way to disconnect from your body, then that's where it becomes a disharmony in your system. So yeah, I'm so glad that she can find her way with that. Now that you are so dialed into your own emotional rhythms and you're watching the frequency of things and the intelligence of the universe, right? The intelligence of our ancient wisdom and the intelligence of our modern medicine and capabilities when it's used in connection with all of these other facilities that we have. What are you seeing with the emotional energetic imbalances and healings? Like, how have you seen people transform from taking steps back and using these triad of medicine that you work within?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the biggest gift that I feel the plants and nature allow us is the opportunity to drop into the present moment, to be here. And because I truly believe that the present moment is a portal. I believe the present moment is a portal. And it's about practicing to be still enough and to be here in this moment and not be distracted and not be in the storm and not be caught up in the past and the fears and not be projecting out with our worries and our concerns, but to simply be here. And so I've noticed that as people have, number one, because in a way, sometimes you need to have that experience of what it means to be here. You have to have that experience. It's like if I'm like, be joyful, and someone's like, I've never experienced what it's like to be joyful. And that's where the plants can come in to help you have an understanding of what that feels like so that then you can find ways to integrate that in your life. With myself, with my friends, with clients that I've seen, just other people, close people that I've watched as they've kind of gone on their own personal journey, that grounding in the present moment through their daily practice, through movement, through breath work, through meditation, through getting still, that is how we can move through the storm and move through the chaos that is happening. Because if you're not anchored to the earth, if you're not anchored through your practices, right now there is a fury. As you see, you're hearing the static. I'm feeling it because I'm more empathic. I'm more in terms of feeling at the moment. So I feel it in my body. And to me, it feels very chaotic. And that's the best. It's a swirl.
It is very chaotic.
I see it as like a swirl. I really do. I see it as like a swirl. And then when I look at people, I can see the chaotic energy, like it's a swirl. And so what we need to do, and what's the best practice, is the grounding practices so that we can keep the anchor like a tree, like a strong ancient tree, and be grounded no matter what the wind is bringing. By practicing those practices, we also learn how to observe and be an observer, right? Because we're here for self-mastery and personally, that's what I think life's about. Life's about self-mastery, and it's about returning back to ourselves and remembering who we are. And so when it comes to mental mastery, which I feel like is what is creating the storm, it's the mind, it's the mental chatter, it's the thoughts. I feel like that's a big part of what's contributing to the storm. It's important to be able to simply observe it without being caught up in it. And that is a practice of mastery. That's why meditation and silent work is so important. And as I become more and more clear, and as I step more and more into my own personal power and my own clear channel, I have to do my daily practices. Like I cannot, and you're right. And just also how we eat, the clearer that I have gotten, the less that I can eat anything outside of just what nature is providing. It does not sit with my system. It causes a lot of
processing and the sugar, the sugars.
It's just not in harmony with my body at all. And so that's been interesting to kind of watch and to kind of observe even within myself in terms of just like helping people. It's just really helping them to, start with small habits like their food and their nutrition and breathing and getting out into nature. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, that's so powerful that you talk about the sensitization with the food. And the more you get rooted into yourself, I think it does, like any area that you're feeling, or I should say that you're using as a way to dissociate yourself. And for most of us, like our processing foods and things like that is a huge way. We've just learned how to say, okay, well, I don't really want to feel this. I'm just going to eat this kind of food. And then it's chemicals. So it does have impact, right, on us. It does dysregulate us, and it does help us dissociate from the truth of ourselves. But the more you step into that and get comfortable, as you say, in the present moment and get comfortable in yourself, that's where we start to see that crave for that life force energy that we get from foods that are meant to nourish us. And yeah, it's such a beautiful experience. I did for everyone listening, I did a plant medicine retreat with Stephanie, which was so beautifully held. And I want to kind of get into this too, a little bit about the plants, about the medicine of the plants, because when we talk about medicine, I think there's maybe not the understanding that there's so much medicine in our natural world. There's medicine in our breath. There's medicine, and just taking a moment to, for me, when you talk about grounding, I've been practicing lately, and I've done this since I was a kid, but sometimes I forget. I just look at the sky and I watch the clouds, and I love to breathe with the clouds. And then I can feel my connectedness with the whole world and the people in it. It makes me more compassionate. It makes me less frazzled. And it's a very quick and easy way to ground, just by looking at clouds and breathing with the clouds. And these practices are medicine. But then when we talk about the medicine of the plants, there's a lot of benefits, especially now there's so much science behind different plant medicines are so helpful, especially with traumas and healing certain mental disharmony within the body. And I know that was my experience, and I want to get into some more depth with you, but I want to share with everyone listening a little of that experience. I was led to you because it was so beautifully held in space. And that was what I was looking for. I needed sacred space. I needed someone that could honor what my soul was really craving for, which was that sacred space. And for me, I wasn't necessarily looking to heal anything particular, but because of some traumatic time periods in my life, it's like within my body, in every other area that I function, I felt really healed. I've done deep, deep shadow work, and I've gone inward and taken the time to let things unlock. but from certain areas of my body, there was still, I would notice this freeze pattern where I felt like I didn't feel as free in my movement. I didn't feel as free in ways that I knew I could. If that makes sense for everyone listening, it's just knowing that when I would touch my legs, I could feel there was almost like a numbness to that experience. And that's how I knew, wait, I'm not fully grounded in my wholeness. I'm not present with it. And so I think that's what led me to this exploration. Because like you, I tend to be more reactive to medications and things. So I'm very cautious of what I take. And so for that reason, I never really explored much in the way of medication or in plant medicine, other than, mushrooms like reishi and chaga, and utilizing more of Ayurvedic practices in my diet, which really works well for my system. And as a matter of fact, ashwagandha is a practice that I use as a tea nightly, especially in times of high stress. I feel like it just wraps my nervous system in this beautiful little blanket and coziness. And I'm like, wow, I'm really coping with things so much better, So that's one of my little tips. But so in this practice with you of this journey, and I won't go into the full depth of that, I'll have a solo episode and I'll share more about that if anyone's interested. But I could feel the freeze coming off my body. I could feel that in presence with myself, I was the one that could choose to be either attached to that freeze or surrender it and recognize that I had the ability to make that decision. And so it was a really beautiful gift to sit in that experience and recognize the freedom and the truth within my body, the medicine that I needed. And so it brought me into an empowerment with that. That was really a unique experience. I want to talk to you more about what the medicine of working with plants looks like, and also go on the other side of that and talk about people who have had some negative experiences that weren't in held space or that mentally were not prepared to go into shadow work on the other side of that.
Absolutely. So when it comes to the plants, it's understanding, and like what you were saying, like nature, one of the things I realized in my jungle work is that nature really does have everything that we need to heal, but from a medicinal standpoint. When I went on my jungle path, I wasn't just working with ayahuasca, but I was also working with master plants. And so these are other Amazonian plants that they have everything to heal everything in the body.
Could you share what those would be? Because I'm really curious, for everyone listening.
And so what you would do is I would go on these retreats. Let's say they were 2 weeks to 4 months. And especially if it's like a 2-week retreat, you go on it for 2 weeks. You're in seclusion. You're in a hut. There's no electricity. You're really sitting with yourself. They bring you your food every single day. So there's a lot of time to just be with yourself. And then you come together only for ceremony. And a lot of these will have anywhere between, if it's 2 weeks, usually like 4 to 5 ayahuasca sits or ayahuasca ceremonies. But in between, you're also drinking a specific medicinal tea. And usually, for the most part, that's not necessarily has any hallucinogenic properties or anything like that. It's really more kind of as if you were drinking like an ashwagandha tea or just like a very medicinal tea. There's different teas out there like Bovinsana, which is it's a common one that a lot of people will drink on their first time in terms of doing these types of experiences. And that's really known for really opening the heart and really helping with, grief and loss and just things that we're holding on within the heart. It's also beautiful for inner child healing because we hold our inner child in our heart, different things like that. Then there's other types of plants we have that you can sit with. Some of them are flowers, some of them are trees. And again, when you sit with trees, they have their own properties of just, internal strength and really strengthening that inner fire, as well as like blood purification. And so there's just lots of different types of, plants out there based on what your body needs. There's one specific, if you've had a lot of body pain and inflammation in their body, there's certain plants that'll help with decreasing inflammation in their body. There's plants that are really specific for joints, plants that are really specific for the spine. So it's rather fascinating. And what I love about, that path of plant medicine, the curandismo path, those who actually study that and who live that path. One thing I love, you have to understand these plants are alive. It's very obvious, but in case somebody needs to hear that, these plants are alive. They have their ancient technology and they have wisdom for us. and they have DNA. That's one thing to understand. Everything that's here on this earth has DNA. It's why we're all connected. It's why we're all connected is because, and why we're, I believe we're all one. And so we're all connected, through this DNA. And so when you were working with the plants, and this is why, for example, I believe more in what comes from nature, and I don't believe in synthesized kind of psychedelics. Those are synthesized in the lab, because if you're missing the soul, if for lack of better terms, you're missing the spirit of nature when it's something that's synthesized in a lab. It doesn't have that same. So that's why I prefer to only work with something that is grown from the earth. That's my personal preference, my personal choice. And it's understanding that what these plants are doing is they are bringing in a frequency of unconditional love. It's a high frequency of just, that's it. That's all it is. It's unconditional love. And it's going in and it's going within you, and it's looking for the parts of you that are not of unconditional love. When you're working specifically with the psychedelics, something like ayahuasca or psilocybin, that, it really allows you to drop out of the thinking mind and come deep into the subconscious mind to really bring up what are those parts of you that are hidden away, that are not of love. And that to some extent can be what some people feel in terms of discomfort, especially with things like ayahuasca, like the discomfort and the purging and the intensity of it. I believe has a lot to do with that discrepancy in frequency between the unconditional love and what you're holding in your body. It's really bringing that up so that you can really see it and become aware so that you have that potential to release it. That's one of the beautiful things about, working with the plants is that they are really giving us the gift, and they are a bridge, because in actuality, the plant medicine, they're not meant to be used forever. It's not meant to be something that you take, which is why it's so fascinating and so exciting, the research that they're doing with psilocybin and PTSD and depression. They're seeing that, it's helping to really heal people, and people don't need to continue to take medications, which that doesn't really benefit big pharma. But it's just, again, it's because what these plants are doing is that they're helping you to remember who you are. They're helping you to remember what it's like to be of unconditional love, to feel that frequency, and then how you integrate that. That's the most important part. It's your integration, how you integrate that in your life afterwards. How do you embody? Because really it's just showing you, this is what it can be like to be connected. This is what it can be like to feel free in your body. This is what it can be like to feel love in your body, to feel at peace in your body, to feel grounded in your body. Now that you've felt it, go and do the practices, which are so simple, go do the practices so that you can cultivate that in your body. And then you don't even need to use the plants. They're really that bridge, for us.
And let's kind of dive into this really quickly too, because for everyone listening, I want to break this down in conversation together. So when we talk about the plants are alive, that they carry the DNA, that everything is one. So the way that I look at this is from an energetics perspective and being able to see the life force of things. Everything has its unique purpose in this planet and within the universe, right? And every breeze in the wind carries with it a whisper of language, of information, of it's bringing you the wisdom of all the ages before and all the ages to come. And so within that, that's what it means to be one, is built into our life, built into just, if we even want to look at just earth, built into the earth is so much wisdom on how to live in wholeness, on how to be the love consciousness that we are created to be. And so with that, wherever there is a gap that we're feeling with our lifestyle, with our health, with our well-being, with our mental well-being, all of these different areas in our modern quote unquote lives, we have become kind of disconnected from, dissociated to. It helps you connect to what it is that you're needing to close that gap. And how does it do it? Because it's an intelligent life force. Because we are intelligent life force. So just because a plant doesn't speak our language, it's still speaking its language. And we can see that even when we're connecting. I love to watch the plants talk to each other, and they have the sound technology now that can connect to different plants. And, when people come at the plant with knives or with fire, the plants will start screaming like it's a fear. It knows this is danger, right? There's an intelligence in its energetic system. And so we're using something that's alive, that has in its DNA from all the times that it's been seeded and planted and died and rebirthed, and all of this through its whole genetic makeup of that whole species of plant. It has the wisdom to help say, oh, human, this is what you need because in your love consciousness, this is what you're missing. And I see that with adaptogens, right? With just even the use of what I was saying, like ashwagandha, where it really goes into the system and in any place in your body that it's needing that support, that regeneration, that calm, it helps deliver that to the most needed place. And over time, it's not that you're masking or putting the Band-Aid on something,
Right.
which is what you're talking about with synthetics, right? Anything that is of synthetic or manufactured nature, there isn't a soul, there isn't that DNA, there isn't that wisdom. It's created without that and almost intentionally, I think, as a disconnection tool. But so that's a whole other rabbit hole. But a whole fucking rabbit hole. But so when we're talking about the things that are of nature, right? Mm-hmm. Even to the way that we eat, when we eat in honor of our food, whatever type of food you eat, whether it's vegan, whether you eat animals, there's a wisdom to that food that your body knows it needs, depending on vibrationally and in the density that you are, what your soul is needing, what your body is needing, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what we're talking about when we say that it goes where it's needed. Because mm-hmm. over time, that ashwagandha, I take it when I'm in dire need and I can feel, wow, my mental capacity is like, there's so much in the world going on that I'm hearing or feeling. Mm-hmm. I don't feel like I'm coping as well. I'm not being able to ground into myself as well. So mm-hmm. I utilize that ashwagandha as a tea at night so that over time, my body can settle into its resiliency. And that's what you're saying with the plants and the plant medicine is over time, your body gets the healing it needs. Yes. And you are regenerated. You are a different person.
You are. And that's why I tell people, if you're going to step onto this journey, of healing, and especially when you walk with the plants and you decide to work with the plants, whether it's from the plants that have the psychedelic properties, or even like what you're saying, just kind of the Ayurvedic principles, and just mm-hmm. really working with food as medicine, and, and overdosing, as we say, on nutrition and good, proper nutrition that you need. So know that your life is going to change. You are asking for your life to change, and you're asking for your frequency to change. And I will say, it really comes down, like what's happening right now is like our nutrition is so important. And I just want to say one more thing just about the plants.
Yeah.
Because one thing that's been coming through a lot for me in my journeys is that the plants, they want to communicate with us. They are trying their best to communicate with us. They're trying to, speak to us in our food, right? Like, how do we feel when we eat, fresh fruit, a fresh watermelon, a delicious apple, when we eat nourishing food, like, and how do we feel when we eat the synthetic things? It's trying to communicate with us, the plants that we have in our house. And I will say this, that they know what's happening. They know what's happening in our world. And right. It's the reason why I personally think it's a reason why there's such a resurgence of this need for plant medicine, why it's coming out, why it's becoming more popularized, because we need, some of us, not everyone. I do not think plant medicine is for everyone.
Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about that too.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a moment. So let's just put a pause on that. But I'm just saying they understand what's happening and they know what we're doing to the earth. They understand that there's a need for soil regeneration. They understand that there's a need for going into the waters and cleaning the waters. Like, they see what's going on, and they have, in a way, an agenda. And it's like, I think you realize, like, when you had your experience with the mushrooms, and you're like, hold on, these mushroom people, like, they're just like, it's like
that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, that's a whole other,
but yeah, there was like, well, because as a seer, and then from, like, I have lived in community with plants and life force, like all animals, the wind, as I'm talking about, I have seen it and played with this my whole life. And that's no psychedelics, right? That's right. Just me feeling the power of the earth energy. That's me breathing with the earth. That's seeing the life force within our plants. And I was a raw vegan for several years. There were moments when I felt so clean, I could breathe. And it was like a tickle on the inside of my body. My body was like just so electrified by my own breath. And it was such a beautiful feeling and a recognition of how powerful all of the natural medicines that we have within us are. So then on this plant journey, when I did with the mushrooms, there was one time where I was having a conversation with, the mushrooms, because it's almost like it needed to take over my body in my vision to where it could show me you have the choice of the way that you're holding things in your body or not. And I was like, hold up a second, because I'm very guarded at what comes into my energy field, because I've, dealt with so many different entities, and that's a whole other intuitive conversation. Life forces that did not have good intention, people without good intentions, things like that were harmful. And so by nature, I'm very skeptical of surrendering to, experiences, which was also another lesson, right? To put trust in what my inner intuition and knowing and what that experience was. And so with that surrender into the experience and into the hands of the mushrooms that we were taking and saying, okay, I'm going to be open-minded here to this experience, which is much more earth oriented than I normally exist in. My frequency is usually in a higher plane, and I resonate more with flying creatures, right, than in the rooted earth creatures. Even though I love the experience, I hadn't sat in that place. So it was uncomfortable for me. And so I did experience that. And I was like, hold up a second. I don't want to put my roots down. I like flying around. I like being in that buzzing. They're like, no, you have to learn from this. So that was the message I got, was you have to understand the sensation for us to be able to show you what that sensory feels like in your body.
Yes. And to be able to communicate with you, because like I said, they have knowledge and they have ways to help us. And we need to build a relationship, be open to building a relationship. Being open to building that relationship so that we can create that communication, with them.
Yes.
Because they have to share with us, and they're going to be what helps us to regenerate this planet so that we can have a planet, we can have a healthy earth for generations to come.
Absolutely. Yeah. We have so much of the wisdom and the medicine around us. So we love the plant medicine and the wisdom, not only within the plants, but also the cultures that have really utilized the wisdom of all the tools around, the ancient tools. So let's talk a little bit about people that this might not be meant for, or where microdosing might be a better option, or why some people have, injury with ayahuasca, or they feel it's too much and it really creates almost like a traumatic event for them. What do you know from your studies with this, and what can we share so that those listening can really kind of understand, does this feel right to me? Does this not feel right to me?
Well, I think number one, when you're embarking on your healing journey, like you said, there's the simple things and the easier things, I would say, that are good to start with, which is, nutrition, meditation, breath work. See how your body reacts to that. See how your body reacts to breath work. Like if you do breath work and all of a sudden you're like flying through the stars, and you all of a sudden find yourself just going through space, I would consider you probably more open and more, not as grounded. If just doing just a deep, beautiful ceremony like that allows you to just float off. Sometimes especially with individuals that are very open, especially in their upper chakras, they're very open, very airy, very
like you're talking to me right now.
Very floaty and airy, and it's beautiful, and they're flying. It's like sometimes ayahuasca can be too much. It can be too much. It's too much. If you're still feeling called to that, despite that, I feel like there's ways to walk towards it and in baby steps. And this is where breath work, this is where somatic movement, intuitive movement, ecstatic dance, the getting physical, right? These are all beautiful practices that can really help you to ground if you are someone that you tend to be more in the air and your upper chakras are more open. And then this is where like microdosing can come into play, taking small microdosing, working with the mushrooms and microdosing to kind of really help you integrate that frequency, more of that grounding. Because when you microdose, for the most part, you really shouldn't feel what you're taking in a sense. And if you do feel it with a microdose, then you're very sensitive and you have to be very mindful. And I've had people who just with a microdose tablet that they're incredibly sensitive and they have to take half of what I would suggest for a microdose. And that has a lot to do with just knowing yourself and knowing how sensitive you are to even just looking at how, if you've ever taken synthetic medications, if you've ever taken like Benadryl or Tylenol or a medication, like you're like, wow, I'm really sensitive. Is your system very sensitive to medications? That also is one of the things I look for, especially when I'm helping people or helping them decide what they want to do. It's like, well, how sensitive are you? And so it's just important to take a stepward approach. I personally, and I consider myself prior, like the older version of me, like very grounded, like very dense, very grounded, very in my mind, very just like in this world. And I started with breath work and intuitive movement.
Right.
And then I started with mushrooms and then I went to ayahuasca. And some people do. And there's other medicinals, like I've also done bufo before, which is the toad. I've done popo. And these are other, types of medicinals that the earth has. So yeah, I think it's important to just take a stepward approach towards things and not just jump into things. Because like I said, you have to be careful what you're asking for, because you can understand a lot. You can become very aware and you have to, in a way, be ready for what you're about to see and what you're about to feel. It's not even also what it really impacts you at such a frequency level. It changes your frequency, it upgrades your frequency. And then that will show up in different ways on the other side in your integration in your life. So that's important. Another thing too, and we'll speak to just kind of like safety. It's incredibly important that you choose safe environments to do these journeys and these ceremonies with, because what ends up happening is that two things. Number one, when you go into a ceremony, you're opening up your energetic field to everyone else that's in that energetic field. That's why I always tell people every journey is a once in a lifetime opportunity, because how we're coming in that moment, energetically, it's in that moment. That's it. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. We're coming together. And so that's why it's important for you to work with individuals that really do embody, safe practices and really are walking with integrity with this path and with medicine. Again, what ends up happening is that anyone who's facilitating, what they're really doing through their own path is they're creating, the way that I think about it is that they're creating in a way a big pool or a big hole, based on the work that they've done. I believe that a facilitator can't take you deeper than where they've gone. So they're creating this hole of depth and you get to choose how far you want to go into that hole or how far you want to go into that water, however you choose to really look at that. And that's why, when I think about people that I personally sit with, I look at their life. I look at, are they walking in integrity? Are they embodying Christ consciousness, unconditional love? Are they doing the work? Are they, are they continuing to do their own personal work? Because we are never fully healed. I don't believe we're ever fully healed. I feel like, we need to continue to learn more about ourselves. We need to continue to be held. We need to continue to surrender. We need to continue to stay humble. So all of these things are things that I look for in individuals. And if people have bad experiences again, or it could be the space that it was held in, these are things where it's important that on the other side to find a safe facilitator, that you feel safe, that feels grounded, that you can kind of work through some of what had happened and really try to kind of bring you back more into a more grounded space.
Absolutely. To speak to who you're in space with, for me, I'm very energetically sensitive and emotionally sensitive to others and environmentally sensitive. So, for example, I've heard of situations where people are going into these spaces and the energetics of it aren't being held in integrity, right? And so you are opening up the portal, just like when you open your intuition, you're opening portals to the whole world. That really helps you in the light. It helps you connect to your oneness with consciousness, right? With that love consciousness. And as you say, Christ consciousness, energy, that's our jam. It's really specific because otherwise, if it's not a held space, there's so many factors of like, what are the earthbound energies around? Are there spirits? Are there entities? Are there attachments? Then for the people that are bringing stuff up, if you have facilitators that don't know how to help people with what's coming up, I mean, we have a lot of different attachments on lineage lines that can be brought up during ceremony. And so all of those things need to be held and supported, that if they're not, it can re-traumatize a full experience, not just for the person, but I think the entire group, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that that's what's happening at times for people who are having different plant medicine injuries where they were not prepared for the opening within themselves.
Right.
And so when we open ourselves wide up, you don't always know what's going to come up. Like you can think that you feel really good and you're like, oh, I've done all the shadow work. But maybe you haven't looked at the whole lineage of your family line, 7 generations back, because that's the work that we're doing. We're unlocking this for not just ourselves, but our lineage. And we're unlocking this for collectively for each other so that we can all help one another find freedom and empowerment as a collective, as a planet. And then we're creating that space for the planet too, which is why it's a very symbiotic relationship with the plants. They're helping heal us so we can help heal and elevate their environment as well. So I think that that's beautiful that you spoke to that as well and the power of that, because if it's not in the held space or it's not in a space where you feel that you have the room to integrate, right? And what that means is taking the time to really sit with what you experienced while you were sitting in the medicine, during the time that you took the medicine and what that looks like. It can really shock your life.
Absolutely.
If you think you're just going to walk away from that experience and go right back into your old lifestyle, you walk out of that experience an entirely different person, frequency wise, mentally, emotionally, vibrationally. And that's something I think that's not really spoken about very much.
And that's why a lot of these times it's like the space, it's a gentle space. It's a gentle space. It needs to be a gentle space. That's what I've been noticing as I've been facilitating and just even in my own personal, the more we open up to these frequencies and we open up ourselves, it's like what you just said, it's jarring on our nervous system and it's upgrading our nervous system. And so like, it's important to have that period, especially on the end of a journey or something, to really have that period to just kind of, even if the sensation per se is gone or like you feel kind of complete, but just really bathing in that kind of gentleness so that your nervous system can really ground back in. And because especially, in our society, that's like get up and go and like just like sharp movements. And it's like in that space, and I feel like that's a lot of what I embody. And I feel like I'm guiding people to really go slow, take it easy, be gentle, just sit, just be here. There's nothing else you have to do. Just be here, sit in that. Just that is medicine for people, just to be, just to like hold a space of being.
Yeah.
People are like, what do you mean? Like they don't know what that means.
That's why I just defined integration, because I'm like, maybe I'm going to say this and maybe someone listening doesn't know, but even taking that out of a plant medicine experience, taking the time for that in our daily lives would be hugely transformative. So huge.
Huge transformative, and I think that is a big medicine that a lot of people need. We're human beings. I really believe that everything that we need is so obviously right in front of us. Like I was having this conversation with my husband, Luke, and I was just saying like, everything is in front of us. It really is. Like, it's very obvious, the positive, the good, the light, everything we need to do, and the negative, it's right in front of us. It's hiding in plain sight, as they say. Like we just need to choose. And so that idea of being, that in itself is potent medicine that everyone can incorporate today. And there, whoever's listening, just taking a few moments. And being is not scrolling through social media. Being is not reading a book. Being is not, cleaning your bathroom. Being is literally sitting, laying, eyes closed, looking up at the sky, enjoy, just being there.
Just connecting with yourself and feeling
Connecting
within
with
your
yourself.
wholeness. Yes. That was actually one of the questions I wanted you to share. We could just keep going and going and going. But even aside from the plant medicine journey, from like a whole wellness perspective, what are things that you recommend? Like, what's your prescription for wellness? What are things that people can integrate fully in their lives as we're talking about being?
Absolutely. So I think number one is taking time every day to just really sit and connect with yourself. Even if it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, checking in, closing your eyes, sitting and saying, what am I feeling right now? What's present for me right now? Holding space for that. Holding space for the emotions that may arise, especially if you're as you open up yourself more to the healing path, your body will turn on, your body will connect more, your body will want to release more. And it will do that through how you're feeling. It'll do that through your frustration, your anxiety, your anger, your sadness, your grief. And so just really connecting in. So that's going to be a big part, is that daily check-in. Number two is, remembering your breath, the power of your breath, the power of deep breathing.
I'm like inhaling deeply as you say that, like take a deep
breath. Take a deep breath into the nose and just really anchoring that breath in. And as you exhale, really exhaling that and feeling that deep in your belly, and just really anchoring in and taking in that prana and taking in that life force energy and taking in spirit. I believe spirit's all around us in the breath and in the air and in the frequency of that. Trying to just be mindful of, even if it's just 3 deep breaths 3 times a day or right before bed, but just remembering the power of your breath and how potent that medicine is really important. Number 3, I would say, is definitely your nutrition. Just really start walking towards eating things that come from the earth and avoiding added sugars and chemicals and the processed foods. All of this is just really causing inflammation. It's causing more noise. It's causing more static within the frequency of our body. You're also feeding the microbiomes in the body that are not going to lead to harmony. That's what's causing a lot of the disease. A lot of disease is also rooted in the gut. It's coming from the gut. And that's a whole other kind of topic to think about. How we are like bacteria and we're feeding bacteria within our body. So that's a whole other podcast. But it's true. What we feed, we are feeding. If you think about it, we are feeding colonies within us. Yeah. And if you're eating sugar, that is going to make a certain colony overgrow. I actually really do think the microbiome reflects our society. And just reflects like the need that we can't have more of one type of person or people in power and et cetera. It's just really interesting to think about. So nutrition, hydration is important, our water, these are easy things, simple things. And then the other thing I want to say is movement, walking, exercising, moving your body, going out into nature, connecting with nature, get yourself a plant. If you don't have a plant, they always say you have a house, your plants are taking care of you. You think you're taking care of them, but they're taking care of you. And they're holding space for you and what you're doing. And so bring in a couple plants into your home. And, these are all like beautiful, 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 simple medicine. And just realize that, again, when we think about our mindset, when we think about our thoughts in terms of release work, emotions like bitterness, unforgiveness, resentment, these are also poisonous to our body. These are also frequencies that cause dis-ease and disharmony within our body. So just really starting to look at those things as well within your life. This is like this most simple prescription of how to heal.
The simple is the most powerful too. I mean, they're simple, but they are the life-changing practices. And I love what you were saying about even holding on to the bitterness and the anger, the way that I always try to share with others, or even think if something happens in my life, I think, what is the cost of this? How can I find a way to make peace that feels honoring to my system? Maybe not forgiving the thing that happened or just dismissing it, but where can I find peace and forgiveness and healing within myself and within the relationship cord of whatever the circumstances, because the cost is too high. right? For our health and well-being, the cost is too high.
It's too high. The cost is too high, and we need to make changes yesterday. I mean, I'm just letting you, we need to make changes yesterday.
Yeah.
And for those of you who are parents, it's incredibly important that you incorporate these simple practices with your children. Your children, and in not putting our practices onto them, they know more than we give them credit for. And so
100%.
it's really, fostering them and nurturing them and allowing, because the generation that's coming in is truly the generation that's going to save us. They are so connected. They are so aware. They're so awake. And we really need to not be inundating them with poisonous foods and processed foods and food dyes and sugars. And yeah, there's a lot there, but
you just can't. Yeah, they can't take it. They can't. I mean, we can take it, but they really, really, really can't take it. And they're teaching us like how to look at things differently. It's incredible to see who's coming in now, and we need that. So as a whole community, we're here to support that. I love that you're like, we need this healing like yesterday. But so for everybody listening, don't freak out. You're already doing your healing work, and the fact that you're listening to this means that you are called to something deeper within yourself. The fact that you are drawn to tune into this conversation. And so start with the breath work, start with the connection to yourself, and with learning how to listen to your instincts and intuition, because that is what is going to guide you to the medicine that your body is craving and needing, just like it did for your journey, and where it took you from your lifestyle that was not working for you to now a lifestyle where you're able to help support so many different souls on the journey of health and wellness, not just from the physical plane, but in every other way as well. You have a Radiant Soul health coaching where you can do functional medicine testing. You have the background as ER doctor as well as medicine woman. This triad of wisdom that you bring that's empowering. And as we talked about earlier, it's within the frequency of empowerment, right? You are building the bridge to what is possible in medicine, in healing, and bringing yourself back to soul.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's my greatest privilege. This work has been such an honor, and it's something I'm so passionate about. One thing I love doing is I really do love holding space for individuals to fully feel, and to feel their emotions, to release their emotions, to reprogram their nervous system, and to really be there with you so that you don't feel so alone, and to really, be there holding the space, holding the container, so that, because a lot of people just need to know that they're safe and that they're okay to feel, to go there. And like, that's a lot of what I do, especially with my embodiment coaching and with my breathwork facilitation and things like that. It's just really holding the space to be able for you to go there.
That is powerful, and you hold powerful presence. And I can attest to that as well. Being a friend and having sat with you as well, it felt very safe to be in space with this wisdom that you bring forth. And in the way that you show up for others, there's a safety. And in that safety is the empowerment and the freedom, where we feel safe to drop down into places that we haven't felt safe to do so before.
It takes a lot of courage. And it's understanding, like, one thing that's been coming through a lot for me recently is just that there's a lot to feel. And we don't need to be afraid of it. We don't need to be afraid of the emotions. We're not going to get stuck in the storm. We're not going to get stuck drowning in the water. But if we resist it, that's what causes it to intensify.
Right.
But if we allow ourselves to feel it, to accept it, to see it, it moves through us. And, we're stronger than what we give ourselves credit for. We are here as a human in this physical body, really to experience and to feel. That is what we are here to do, to experience the fullness of life. And the fullness of life is the sadness and the joy and the despair and the bliss. And it's all of it. It's not just one part. It's all of it. I just really want to encourage those who are watching, who are listening, that you are stronger than what you think and you are more than capable and that you are here to feel the ocean of emotion that is within you. This is great work, and it's a great honor to do this work, to have the privilege to do this work.
Oh, I just love that. Feel the ocean of emotion within you. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and all of your journey with us. I think that it's just going to activate and inspire those listening, especially for anyone who's been kind of curious or called to their own journey or questioning their own journey. I think that this conversation will empower that answer. So thank you, my beautiful friend, for being here. I love you so much. It's so good to see you. And I will talk to you soon. Everyone wanting to connect, check out the show notes, all the beautiful ways to connect with Dr. Stephanie Burgos.
Thank you.